Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Jazz is Not What You Think, the podcast that delves deep into the world of jazz with your host, Michael Fagan. In this episode of Jazz is Not What You Think, Michael interviews JoVia Armstrong, whose career is marked by a series of accolades, from being named Best Black Female Percussionist of the Year by the Black Woman in Jazz Awards to her current role as the Executive Board of Chicago's Association for Advancement of Creative Musicians. But before we dive in, we'd like to give a shout out to the sponsor of this episode, the Jazziz Vinyl Club. Picture this, jazz aficionados. As a member of the Jazziz Vinyl Club, you'll receive not one, not two, but 4 premium edition 180-gram vinyl albums carefully curated by the Jazziz editors. These albums feature tracks from jazz legends and today's top artists handpicked just for you. And here's the cherry on top. These vinyl gems will be delivered to your doorstep 4 times a year. It's like Christmas for jazz lovers all year round. But wait, there's more. Each vinyl album comes complete with liner notes penned by Jazziz writers, offering you a deeper dive into the music and the artists behind it. And let's not forget the custom design album cover that makes these vinyl albums true collector's items. So if you're ready to enrich your jazz collection with the finest tunes and exclusive vinyls, look no further than the Jazziz Vinyl Club. It's the club where music lovers and vinyl enthusiasts unite. This is Jazz Is Not What You Think.
All right.
Hi, JoVia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's so nice to meet you.
Same.
Well, great to have you here. And I've been listening to your album, enjoying it immensely.
Yes.
And I want to ask you. Obviously, I got a lot of questions to ask you, but one of the things that there's so much music there because it's got jazz, it's got R&B. I even hear progressive rock. Um, Tell me about that musical journey that you've taken that just resulted in all these different musical flavors on this.
Yeah, it was a combination of, growing up in a household with 2 parents who loved music. My dad, he loved Motown, he loved the blues. My mom listened to a lot of gospel. My dad was into jazz vocalists, so Nat King Cole was always in the house playing. But I had my older sister, she's about 15 years older than me,
Hmm.
huge music head.
Right.
And she lived down the street with my grandmother. And while she was at work, she allowed me to go to her bedroom and listen to her CDs. And so she influenced me with rock, hip hop. I didn't listen to a whole lot of hip hop, but it's a lot of R&B. She was a huge Sheila E. Prince fan. And as a percussionist, though, I gravitated naturally to music from outside of the United States.
Hmm.
So a lot of Afro-Cuban music, Brazilian music from Mali, and like listening to Fela.
Sure.
So all of those, things kind of like melted into one, and I really enjoy freedom. Like liberation is such a huge thing for me, and so I decided to not put myself in a box. I wanted to just create music that influenced me as I was growing up. So that's how that happened.
Well, I mean, you can hear all those influences, and the interesting thing about percussionists, because everyone who I know that listens to lots of different music, whenever it's a drummer or a percussionist, it's I kind of get the feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you kind of feel like you're held to a little bit of a higher standard because everyone kind of expects piano or guitar or vocals, and like, well, I'm a drummer or a percussionist, and I have this album that I'm putting out. It's all my music, and I'm going to show people that this can be really special. Do you feel the pressure with that? Because I have a lot of drummer friends that they tell me when they come out with an album, they're having other musicians perform on the album that play instruments that people are more familiar with, if you would. How does that play into your recording style, your performing style?
That's interesting, because in my world, people have less expectations of me as a percussionist, but also as a woman. Um,
Really?
yeah, I find that a lot of guys have never really taken me all that serious when it came to music or me as a composer. And so what I would hear, I hear a lot of musicians say that percussionists or drummers write really hard music. And I
Mhm.
think that's just because we're so rhythmically inclined.
Mhm.
So there's always like these very intricate rhythms or grooves. And so the music ends up being a little bit more complicated, but it's, you know, I think in my life, it was opposite. It was because 'cause I'm quiet, I'm very
Mhm.
quiet, I'm kind of reserved, and so I think that's when people know or hear that I made an album or wrote music, it's kind of like, "Oh, that's cute," and it actually happened to me once. I met a very famous percussionist many years ago. I went backstage to meet him, and I introduced myself and said, "Yeah, I'm a percussionist," and he actually pinched me on the cheek and said, "Oh, that's cute."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, um, so those types of things happen, but like I said, I kind of I'm a bit quiet, I kinda stay to myself, I do my job, I love music, I go out there, play, I shake hands with people, but after the show is gone, I'm pretty much at home.
Wow. So that percussionist that pinched you on the cheek and say, "Oh, what a cute girl here." Um, they should know that you're going to be featured in a special edition of Jazziz, all about women leaders.
Awesome.
And so, you know, being the leader of the pack, um, for a lot of women who, and I'm hearing these stories because I'm interviewing women in the music world, the trials and tribulations of being a woman in a male dominated field. What have been some of your experiences, maybe trials and tribulations, some things that you struggled with, but you overcame because you're going to do what you're going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of, sexism, which is probably why I've been, a bit reserved. I mean, it's scary at night. You're leaving a club after a gig at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the loading dock is in the alley. And all of the musicians have gone, like everybody's gone. It's just me and whoever's going to lock up. And I'm loading up this car by myself. I've only had one incident that has in the alley where it was like, what, why,
Right, right.
um, it's really you end up learning how to put a guard on, and I don't want that guard up, but it seems like with my career, I was forced. I always wanted to just be a backing musician. I wanted to freelance, and I feel like me stepping into the leadership role, as, a band leader, composer, musician was forced on me almost. And I say that because, I felt like there were many times in my career where I would meet someone who is just like, "Hey, you're really good. Like, you're really good, but your looks alone, like, you should be in LA. You'll be great in LA." And that same person, I have to try to balance the connection I'm making with this person, and, later on, I exchange information as you usually would do and say, "Well, call me, I'm available." But then later you get text messages that are not cool, you
Right,
know?
right.
And not to go into detail,
Yeah.
but, it's more so, um, I was running into that so much, like, all of the sexism that I didn't wanna the industry has just been ugly, and I try to hire people that respect me, and we have a really great relationship, and it's all about the music, you know? Um But I'm sure there's so many women I talk to all the time who have the same experiences,
Wow.
and these.
And as a man who, I'm sensitive to it. I have a wonderful wife. I have four daughters.
Wow.
Um, and but from a man's perspective, we need to hear more about these things because it's easy to say, "Well, I've never experienced that." Well, of course not. You're not a woman when speaking to me, and so I think that those are the unfortunate sort of repercussions of an age old stereotypic, sort of male dominated recording industry, media, live music venue, and our hope. And I would tell my editors all the time, you know, we're going to do a women's issue, and they're like, "Do we really need to do a women's issue?" And I was like, "Well, we don't need to do one, but here's why I think we should." And that is, as I put together this issue and discovered you, what happened was I realized that maybe I'm part of the problem
Mhm.
because it took me to go out and look and seek out talented women that I may not have otherwise heard of,
Mm.
but I made a conscious effort to do that. And what did I find? I found some of the most talented musicians, recording artists, performing artists in the world who just happened to be women.
Yeah.
And so it made my job easier because we had so many incredibly talented people that we could have put in this issue. But it was enlightening to see that, there's a whole world out there that maybe the recording industry, the live music industry, they're a little bit oblivious to.
I agree. I agree. I did a talk in February called Black Women in Jazz. And I did say some things that the audience was very shocked to hear, and more, the message I've been getting this year is to talk about it more. A lot of the people that we go to their concerts are some of the culprits
Yeah.
of these things. I even look at festival lineups, and I'll see a roster full of guys, and I just wonder, like, there's no women that you could have booked, you know?
Right. Right.
Like, we're out here. We're out
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Oh, and you are, and I found you, and I'm so glad I did. The other thing, switching gears a little bit.
Yeah.
I know that you've been involved with some short films, which I always film shorts. I always find that fascinating because sort of the jazz instrumental percussion. As you probably know, Antonio Sanchez has done some film,
Yep.
and I find it interesting percussionists in film music. And tell me about what you believe the connection is there, because I think there is one.
That's a good question. Yeah, because Antonio Sanchez, when what was the movie? Was it Whiplash or
Uh,
no, not
no,
Whiplash.
he did Birdman.
Birdman. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, when he did that, of course, all of my drummer friends, we were all just like, "Yo, look at what he did," you know. I feel like with percussion can be soft, it can be harsh. I think percussion displays a lot more emotion than we give it credit for. A lot of times, we are very used to hearing strings in film scores,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, sure.
um, and with percussion, it just adds a different element. If you go to see an action film, the music,
Mm-hmm.
even if it does use strings, is heavily percussive,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and there's something about it that just makes you want to like drive forward and pick up a sword and swing it. So,
Yes. Yes. So, JoVia, are you still teaching at the University of Virginia?
yep, I'm here. School starts next week.
Wow, that's great. Well, yeah, it's kind of, what do we say in academics? See one, do one, teach one.
Mm,
And so you've seen it, you're doing it,
yeah,
and now you're teaching it.
yeah.
How is that? How is it like working with students who especially know that their professor is also a recording artist that has an international following? So how does that work?
You know, um, I kind of, with myself in undergrad, I was studying with guys like Francisco Mora,
Sure.
um, uh, Rodney Whitaker would come to the school
Oh,
as
yeah.
well, Branford Marcellus. And, all of those guys are players. And that's what I wanted to be. My actual professors who were on faculty at Michigan State were encouraging me to go into education as a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I graduated right after 9/11. I couldn't find a job.
Mm-hmm.
And my career actually fell into music. I was gigging, and that's how I was making money. And I ended up transferring to a school in Chicago, Columbia College, Chicago. And
Oh, yeah.
the thing there is that at Michigan State, it was like this safe haven, like go to school to be an educator, and everyone was listening to their professors. Where what my professors were telling me, I knew was not the only pathway.
Sure.
At Columbia College, what I really loved is that all of the students were already working in the industry. If they wanted to be concert promoters, they were promoting. They weren't waiting on the professors to give them permission or to say, here's your piece of paper. And that's when I met Nicole Mitchell and all of the people in
Wow.
the ABCM.
Mhm.
I was gigging while I was in school. So I would like to think that I am offering that same experience with these students that I'm working with, where um, I'm I'm proof to them that being a musician does pay off. Being a composer, these are the things that you can do, and these are different ways that you can do it. Um, and my background with studying so many different styles definitely helps because I wanted to be able to say yes. If anyone called me for a gig, I wanted to be able to say yes, I can do that. And there was a an artist who was from Chile who asked me to do a tour. And he waited a month. He heard my voice on the phone and realized I was an African American woman. He didn't call back for a whole month. He tried very hard to find musicians from South America to do the tour with him. They couldn't get their visas, so they called me and I went on this tour. And as I was touring, people from the audience would walk up to me speaking Spanish. And so, thought to myself, like, okay, this is something I can do. And so I always just try to encourage students to keep pushing forward.
Sure.
They see what I do. They see how hard I work. I do these really tough shows, these weekends where my flight doesn't get in until 11 p.m. and I'm trying to get into the Airbnb just so I can do one show. So just showing them you push forward and you do it because the payoff feels so great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's another thing we learned in academics. Showing up is half the battle, right?
It really is. It
Yeah.
really is. Show up. Yeah.
So in I read your bio, and you said one of your major influences was Herbie Hancock. And I think he's influenced so many of us. Tell me about why Herbie.
Herbie, because Herbie was the person. So I also, when I was in high school and a little bit of junior high, I was also a classical percussionist.
Oh,
And so I I kind of went through that age thinking in a very purist, like having this very purist idea about music. But in 2001 or 2002, Herbie released this album called Future to Future. And it blew me away. I mean, for one, he did this surround tour.
yep.
The tour was in surround
Oh, yeah.
sound. And that was fascinating to me. And the fact that what I really was impressed with is when I saw the concert footage, you had this younger crowd who were dancing.
Mhm.
And I said, "You don't see that in jazz concerts."
Yeah.
And this was, again, 2001, 2002. Um, and so we had already been removed from, like, big band swing where that music was created for dancers,
Hmm.
and so I was thinking like, "Oh, jazz is way more cooler than I thought." And
Yep.
Herbie did that for me. He had, Terry Lynn Carrington playing a drum machine.
Yeah.
He had a DJ behind him. I was so impressed with the show, I went out and purchased the very same keyboard that Herbie was using.
The one that you wear around your neck.
Oh, not that one, it was a red one, the Chord Karma.
Oh, okay.
It was a red
Yeah.
keyboard, and,
Yeah.
so yeah, that concert, and I heard all of these sounds.
Yeah.
The atmosphere was, like, otherworldly, I guess. And so that was a big reason why. Then I started reading more about Herbie and finding out that he was into electronics and, like, actually went to school for it, and I just really love that.
Yeah. No, I think Herbie Hancock is absolutely in my opinion, the most talented living legend musician that we have. And we're blessed to have him. He's just, I agree with you. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
That's great. So, what's on the horizon? You did this record. I found out about it because I was looking for talent like you.
Mm.
What next?
Whew. I want to push the limits. So, there's another member of the group, a bassist named Damon Wormack, who's also a longtime friend of ours. And we just had a meeting not too long ago, and I said, I'm ready for the third one. And we started talking about it, and we were starting to make plans to get back into the studio. I think the biggest difference is that Leslie and Damon are going to be more involved with the composition aspect of this next one. And so I'm very excited and curious to hear what is going to come out of that, because my compositional style is way more um, organic, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
where Damon has, trained as he's this really amazing bassist, and he can get down with rhythm changes and the jazz standards and understanding harmonies in a very traditional way. And Leslie is she floats in between where um, she knows, she can play bebop and all of these different jazz styles as well. But she also has a background of listening to a lot of music from other countries, and so she kind of fits between the two of us. And so I'm looking to push the atmospheric sound a little bit more. Sometimes that's a struggle with the mixing engineer, and you know, and I
Well,
have
see, that makes Leslie. That's going to make you're the glue. So you have to. You're the one who has to make it all happen. Okay, not no pressure. Well, that is wonderful. Well, I look
yeah.
forward to hearing more from the both of you, and I'm so glad we got to meet like this. And I hope to not only stay in touch with you, but I look forward to hearing more from you. And thank you so much for being on this show.
Thanks, Michael. We appreciate it.
All right, take care. Have a wonderful day.